Welcome to Sunny's Mindset Lab podcast, and welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking on a mission that really spans 2 millennia. We are diving deep into the personal writings of a man who was, well, quite literally the most powerful person on the planet.
The Roman Emperor, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus.
Exactly. And our goal here isn't just a history lesson. We're trying to extract his operating manual for his inner life.
And that's the key, isn't it? This was a set of philosophical principles he never, ever intended for anyone else to see. These are the meditations.
So we're moving past the man as just an emperor and focusing on these core concepts, what does the source call them? The dogmata.
The dogmata, yeah.
The core beliefs that allowed this man, the last of the 5 good emperors, to navigate the absolute peak of power while holding on to something, way more valuable.
His inner peace.
And his control over his own mind.
So you can think of this deep dive as, I guess, a shortcut. A shortcut to understanding this ancient, battle-tested formula for mental resilience. And it really was battle-tested. Oh, absolutely. This wasn't a theoretical exercise for him at all.
The source context is so important here. The notes actually say he wrote the first book, and I'm quoting here, in the country of the Quadi at Granois.
Which means he was on a military campaign.
He was on the front lines, drafting these strategies while fighting tribes like the Marcomanni and the Quadi.
That's a critical point to grasp from the very beginning. This philosophy wasn't, cooked up in some quiet marble library on the Palatine Hill.
Not at all.
This was, for lack of a better term, field maintenance for the soul. He was writing this surrounded by the stench of military camps, the noise of war, the constant crushing administrative weight of the entire Roman Empire.
So when we read these words, we have to know they were forged not in leisure, but under the most intense pressure imaginable.
Which is what makes them so entirely practical.
Okay, so let's set that scene. Let's really understand this paradox of the emperor. Because when you and I picture a Roman emperor, we think of what? Infinite luxury, absolute power.
Comfort, unquestioned authority.
Right. But his reign from 161 to 180 AD was the complete opposite. It was just suffocating, relentless chaos.
He was a man who, by all accounts, just wanted a quiet life of study. He wanted intellectual happiness. But his reality was one unending, brutal crisis after another.
Let's start with the external stuff. The chaos was, it was comprehensive.
It really was. On one side, you have constant major wars. First, it was the Parthians in the east, a huge undertaking. And as soon as that's sort of wrapping up, he gets dragged into this decade-long struggle on the northern frontier.
Against the Germanic tribes. And he wasn't just, signing decrees from a palace in Rome.
No, he was the commander-in-chief. He was living in frontier forts for years on end, sleeping in tents. This is the Emperor of Rome.
And while he's dealing with that, back home, Rome is facing this catastrophic trifecta of problems.
Right. First, you have the pestilence, the Antonine Plague, which was likely smallpox brought back by the legions from the east.
And we're not talking about a mild flu here. This was something that just ravaged the empire for nearly 2 decades. It killed millions.
It decimated the population. It hollowed out the legions, making it even harder to fight those wars on the frontier. It destabilized everything.
On top of that, the source material details widespread starvation.
Massive floods destroyed the grain supplies. So you have plague and famine hitting at the same time. The economic and human toll was just staggering.
It got so bad, didn't it, that Marcus himself was forced into a kind of financial desperation.
He was. Think about this for a second. The Emperor of Rome had to hold a massive public auction to sell off imperial treasures.
What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Furniture from the palace, gold plates, priceless heirlooms, even his wife's silk and gold-embroidered robes and her jewels. He sold it all.
Just to raise money for the army and the citizens.
Just to keep the state functioning. It's maybe the ultimate proof that his stoicism was practical. He was willing to sacrifice every symbol of imperial status, all his personal wealth, for the common good.
That's an incredible image. So you have war, plague, famine, and if that wasn't enough, the internal strife was just as brutal.
The pressures of family life magnified 1,000 times by being the emperor.
His son, Commodus.
Commodus was, well, a disaster. Weak, vain, and utterly worthless. Marcus must have known he was destined to undo all of his father's good work. That's a heavy burden for a parent.
And then there were the scandals around his wife, Faustina. Rumors of infidelity. Though he always stood by her, publicly and privately.
He did. But the political tension just kept building, and it all came to a head with the Avidius Cassius rebellion.
This was one of his most trusted generals.
A brilliant general who declared himself emperor in the East. This was the ultimate nightmare for a Roman ruler. Civil strife. Brother fighting brother.
So how did Marcus react? Because this is where the philosophy really gets tested.
His reaction was, I think, the purest expression of his philosophy in action. When Cassius was assassinated by his own officers, they brought the head to Marcus.
Man.
He refused to even meet the murderers. He was disgusted by it. He said he wished he could have granted Cassius a free pardon. His focus was immediately on mercy and reconciliation, not revenge.
So even in the face of the ultimate betrayal, his first thought was for the common good.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is, the chaos didn't paralyze him. His administration was actually incredibly effective. He left this profound, positive legacy.
He was known for his dedication to justice, right?
For protecting the weak, for making the lives of slaves less harsh, which was a huge deal at the time. He endowed charitable foundations for poor children. He never, ever stopped performing his duty.
Which, for a Stoic, is the highest good.
It's everything.
So, given all this overwhelming external pressure, war, plague, betrayal,
Yeah.
why Stoicism? Why did he turn to that philosophy specifically?
Well, the sources make it pretty clear that the traditional Roman state religion just wasn't cutting it. It offered, and I think the phrase was small satisfaction.
They describe it as a bargain.
It was totally transactional, right? You perform a certain rite, you make a specific sacrifice, and you expect a favor from the gods in return. It had nothing to do with your personal character or your morality.
And when you're facing a plague that kills a third of your people, that kind of bargain religion must feel incredibly hollow.
Completely hollow. It offers no comfort, no framework for understanding suffering. Stoicism filled that massive spiritual and moral void.
What was the core difference then?
Stoicism provided a framework where the highest good of a human being is to consciously work with God or nature for the good of the whole community. It stripped away all the ritualistic fluff.
And it centered life on what?
On morality, on virtue, on personal responsibility. It gave him an internal metric for success when all the external metrics like winning a war or preventing a plague were failing him.
And that brings us to the Meditations itself. It's so important for anyone listening to remember these are not polished philosophical essays.
No, not at all. They are truly the innermost thoughts of his heart. They were set down to ease it, to help him bear the burden of his duty and all the countless annoyances of his life.
It's his journal of self-correction, his philosophical first aid kit.
That's a great way to put it. And before he even gets into the core doctrines, the toolkit, he dedicates the entire first book to a list of gratitude.
He reviews the virtues he learned from other people.
Yes, the section is called Concerning Himself, and it's the foundation for everything that follows. It basically says, your character, your strength, it's derived from the examples set by the people who taught you.
Okay, let's unpack a few of those because it's like a blueprint for an ideal education. It's all about character, not status.
Right. From his grandfather Verus, he says he learned to be gentle and meek, to refrain from all anger and passion.
For the most powerful man in the world, that's a huge lesson in emotional self-regulation. The ability to not fly off the handle when you could have anyone executed.
It's immense. And then look at what he learned from Apollonius. He says he inherited true liberty and unvariable steadfastness.
Let's translate that. What does that mean for us today?
It means consistency under pressure. It means being the same person, grounded in the same principles, whether you're enduring the sharpest physical pain or dealing with the unbelievable grief of losing a child.
Emotional mastery.
That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And he also learned from Apollonius how to accept favors from friends without becoming, the old phrasing is, obnoxious unto them.
Which is such a subtle but important point. Let's unpack that.
It means he learned how to accept help or a gift graciously without letting that favor become a subtle form of control.
Like a social debt.
Exactly. Or an obligation that binds your freedom of action later. It's about maintaining your own dignity and independence even while you're expressing genuine gratitude. It's a very fine line to walk.
Then there's Rusticus, who seems to be a really crucial figure.
He was. Rusticus was his intellectual guide. He's the one who prompted Marcus to realize his own character needed redress and cure. He saw flaws and wasn't afraid to point them out.
Yeah, and he's the one who gave him the book that changed everything.
He introduced him to the writings of Epictetus, the moral commentaries. And this wasn't just a casual book recommendation. This introduction redirected the entire spiritual and philosophical path of the Emperor of Rome.
It's an amazing reminder that sometimes the most important thing a mentor can do is just point you toward the right book at the right time.
But Rusticus did more than that. He also taught him intellectual rigor. He taught him to read with diligence, not to rest satisfied with a light and superficial knowledge.
Or, as he says, nor quickly to assent to things commonly spoken of.
I mean, in today's world of social media, hot takes, and information overload, that lesson in resisting superficial knowledge might be more relevant than ever.
Don't just accept the headline.
Dig deeper, always.
And finally, his adoptive father, Antoninus Pius. He seems to be the model for leadership.
A complete masterclass. Marcus lists his virtues: meekness, constancy without wavering, freedom from vanity, being hardworking but not just busy.
Assiduity, persistence.
Impartiality. He was described as a ripe, mature man, someone who couldn't be flattered and who was able to govern both himself and others.
So the lesson that ties all of these examples together is that Marcus Aurelius had everything the world could possibly offer: power, wealth, fame, authority.
Everything.
Yet he defined his personal happiness not by any of those external things, but simply by having, as he puts it, good inclinations of the soul, good desires, good actions.
And that really sets the stage for the practical toolkit he developed to make sure those good inclinations won out over all that external chaos.
Right. So let's get into that toolkit, the engine of this whole mindset.
This is where we get to the actual engine of Stoic tranquility. Marcus realized that, the greatest source of our suffering is our failure to distinguish between two categories of reality.
What we can control and what we can't.
That's it. So this whole section is about the non-negotiables. Where to apply your effort, which is control, and where you must surrender, which is acceptance.
Okay, let's start with the first principle. Resisting what the outline calls the tyranny of the external. He gives us the cognitive solution right at the start. He writes, "All is but opinion and conceit."
That one simple sentence contains the key to the entire Stoic method. We have to understand that external things, poverty, a promotion, a political disaster, an insult, they stand outside our soul. They are still and quiet.
They're neutral.
They are completely neutral. All the trouble, all the anger, the fear, the anxiety, it proceeds from the opinion, the judgment we apply to that external event within our own mind.
So if I lose my job, the event of losing my job is neutral. My suffering comes from my judgment that says, this is a catastrophe, or my life is over, or I'm a failure.
Precisely. The event itself doesn't hurt you. Your assessment of the event hurts you.
And if you can internalize that, it changes everything.
It does. It means the mind's job is purely defensive and strategic. It has to keep itself, as he says, pure from all violent passion and evil affection, from all rashness and vanity. It's a huge mandate.
But it clarifies the mind's sole sphere of control, your judgment.
Right. And he calls this domain of control the rational mistress part. Now, that's an archaic term.
Yeah, we need to translate that. What does it mean?
Think of it as your true self, your rational core, the inner fortress, the CEO of your mind. It's the part that is supposed to be in charge, the mistress of the internal house.
And that inner fortress, that part should be, what's the word he uses? Circumscribed. Walled off.
Exactly. It shouldn't be subject to any bodily pain or pleasure. Nothing external, whether it's a compliment or a punch, can get in there and contaminate it unless the mind itself gives permission.
You have to actively choose to lower the drawbridge.
You do. And if the Emperor of Rome, who had more external pressures than anyone, could achieve that separation between his body and his rational core, then, well, so can we.
So this definition of what's inside your jurisdiction, that leads directly to the practical application of control. What do you do when an inevitable obstacle shows up? A setback, an illness, a betrayal?
The Stoic mind is not hindered. This is such a powerful idea. When an impediment arises, the mind can use it as a proper object to further what it originally intended.
The obstacle becomes the way.
That's the modern phrasing for it. And it's perfect. Nothing can ultimately stop the mind in the things that properly belong to it, which are its judgments, its intentions, and its virtue.
Can we put a practical frame around that? The idea that the obstacle becomes the resource.
Absolutely. So imagine your goal is to build a wall, and your shipment of standard bricks is delayed. An average person says, well, I'm stuck, I'm impeded, I have to wait.
Okay.
The Stoic mind looks around and sees a pile of extremely heavy, awkward stones. It says, my intention was to build a wall. These stones are a different material, but I will use them to build an even stronger, more permanent foundation.
So the impediment, the lack of bricks, didn't stop the intention of building. It just changed the method.
And it ultimately improved the result. The obstacle was folded into the plan and made the outcome better. That's the core of using the impediment to further the goal.
That's a powerful reframe. Now let's look at the other side of the toolkit. We've defined what we can control, our judgment. Now we have to define what we absolutely cannot.
Which is basically everything else. This is embracing necessity or acceptance.
And Marcus forces himself to accept what the universe provides by focusing relentlessly on the nature of change.
He repeats it over and over again, almost like a mantra. The world is mere change. Everything, every empire, every building, every human body is perpetually dissolving and resolving back into the matter of the world.
So grieving a single loss or resisting a single change is like fighting against the tide.
It's fighting the fundamental mechanism of the universe. It's insane. He even reframes death. It's not a tragedy. It's merely a work of nature, conducing to nature.
It's a natural process that's necessary for the constant recycling and renewal of the whole system.
Right. If you can really grasp that deep current of perpetual flow, you stop gripping so tightly onto things being permanent.
And this leads him to this profound intellectual challenge that he presents to himself, what he calls the divine dilemma.
Yes. He writes that a man must remember the choice, either a providence or a Democritus as Adams.
Okay, let's break that down. What's the difference between providence and atoms, and why does he say that worrying is useless in both cases?
So providence is the Stoic view that the world is governed by a rational, wise, benevolent force, God or nature. Everything that happens happens for the best, even if we can't see the reason why.
Okay, a rational, ordered universe.
And Adams, which comes from the philosopher Democritus, is the opposite. It's the idea that the universe is just random, blind, chaotic chance. There's no plan. It's just atoms swerving in the void.
So if I believe in providence, then my worry is useless because I have to trust the divine plan. Worrying is actually kind of impious.
Correct. The plan is perfect, so your anxiety is pointless. But here's the brilliant part. If you believe the universe is just chaotic, random atoms,
My worry is still useless.
still useless, because there's no grand plan for your anxiety to disrupt. Your tiny little worry makes no difference to the infinite randomness of the cosmos.
So in either scenario, total rational order or total irrational chaos anxiety about external outcomes is completely illogical.
It is brutal and efficient logic. It just cuts the legs out from under anxiety about fate.
The conclusion then has to be a focus on virtue.
Always. If the gods have a plan, you submit to it virtuously. If they don't, which he thinks is an impious thought, then you must deliberate for yourself what is most profitable. And the most profitable thing is always virtue, because it's the only thing you actually control.
On a personal level then, he says we have to accept whatsoever happens, though harsh and unpleasing.
Yes, as tending to that end, to the health and welfare of the universe. This isn't passive resignation. It's not being a doormat.
It's an active decision.
It's an active decision to align your small personal will with the immense universal will. It's cooperation with nature.
So your discomfort, your loss, your suffering, it's reframed. It's not a personal disaster.
It's a necessary component for the health of the entire cosmic system. You are serving a higher, broader good simply by enduring it with courage and virtue. This transforms acceptance from a weakness into a form of heroic duty.
So we have this grand framework, control and acceptance. How do we bring that down to earth? How do we ground these massive concepts in the daily grit of just being a person?
Marcus's answer is by focusing intensely on two things: simplicity and living solely in the present moment.
He gives us the antidote to our modern world of maximalism right here. He says, remember this, that very little is needed to make a happy life.
And this is coming from the emperor, the most materially wealthy and powerful man in the Western world who had everything, but often chose to sleep in a soldier's tent. That's why the message lands so hard. He's speaking from experience.
The focus is on just reducing the sheer volume of activity, both inner and outer. He writes, hasten to an end, and giving over all vain hopes, help thyself in time.
The instruction is to reduce thyself unto perfect simplicity. It's the ancient version of decluttering your mind.
And he argues that gaining real mental leisure, real free time in your head, comes from cutting off unnecessary actions.
Exactly. He says if we examine our days, most of what we say, think, and do is superfluous. It's non-essential.
The gossip, the minor anxieties, the doom scrolling, the pointless social posturing.
All of it. If you cut off those superfluous movements, he says, you gain immense leisure and you save yourself a ton of trouble, even if you remain physically busy with your duties.
He also has this radical test for sincerity, for an internal audit. He says a man must train himself to think only of things that he could answer this and that freely and boldly if someone suddenly asked him what he was thinking about.
It's a powerful filter, isn't it? It forces instant integrity.
It really does.
If you can't honestly say, I am thinking about how to solve this problem at work, or I'm reflecting on how to be a better parent, then your thought is probably vanity or complaint or distraction, and it needs to be discarded. It protects the integrity of that rational core.
And to drive home why this simplification is so urgent, he uses this sobering reflection on mortality. I think of it as the Hippocrates warning.
Right. He reminds us that even the most famous, celebrated people in history, great healers like Hippocrates, prophets, philosophers, kings, they all died, and their fame didn't last.
He says Hippocrates, after curing so many sicknesses, fell sick himself and died. Alexander the Great, Pompey, Caesar, all of them just faded into fables or dust.
And this reflection has a very specific practical purpose. It's to prompt you to take action now.
It's not just about death, though. It's also about the erosion of our mental capacity.
That's a key insight. He observes that the intellective faculty, our rational power, the thing that allows us to think clearly and choose virtue, will often fail long before our body does.
So we need to simplify and act with virtue, not just because death is coming, but because dementia or illness might come first and take away our ability to even try.
That urgency is what propels his second mandate for daily practice, to dwell intensely in the present. This is probably the hardest one.
It's so difficult. He writes that a person can part with no life properly, except for the tiny little part that they're living right now.
The longest life and the shortest life, he says, come to the same thing in the end. Because the time that is present is the same for everyone. It's just a moment. And that moment is all we ever truly possess.
The past is gone. You can't change it. The future is uncertain. It might not come. Worrying about either of them is wasted energy because they aren't ours to lose.
So we have to be laser focused on the now. He insists, if thou shalt intend that which is present, following the rule of right and reason, thou shalt live happily.
Happiness isn't some long-term goal you achieve one day in the future.
No, it's a momentary state. It's achieved by correctly managing the current decision or the current thought.
And the ultimate practice of presence is his advice to do every action as thy last action. I mean, what a terrifying and clarifying thought.
It's an incredible mental tool. If you knew the next thing you did was the last thing you'd ever do, would you do it with vanity? Would you be consumed by petty anger over it?
No, of course not.
No. Doing every action as your last forces maximum virtue, maximum intentionality. It removes self-love and all dislike of your current circumstances. It collapses your entire philosophical system into that one single moment and demands your absolute best self.
And to ground this perspective, to really make it stick, he tells us to reflect on the swift disappearance of huge, powerful places.
Hellas, Pompeii, Herculaneum, these were monuments to permanence that were just wiped off the map in an instant by nature.
In that perspective, it offers a kind of solace. He says, the whole space of any man's life is but little.
And as little as it is, with what troubles must it be passed? That isn't despair. It's not him being pessimistic.
No, it's a radical call for perspective.
It is. Our lives are small, our bodies are fragile, the world is chaotic, so we should cherish and maximize the one and only thing we actually control, this moment that we are in right now.
So we've talked a lot about the inner life, this intense focus on your own mind. But the Stoic's duty isn't solitary, is it?
No, not at all. And it couldn't be for him. He was the emperor of the known world. His philosophy had to work for society. He clearly states we are all co-workers. We're as necessary to each other as the feet, the hands, and the eyelids.
I love that analogy.
Huh?
As the rows of the upper and under teeth, we are designed to work together.
We are inherently communal beings.
So this is the social dimension of Stoicism.
Mm.
And it's rooted in this principle of justice, which comes from what he calls the kinship of reason.
Yes, and he prepares himself for this literally at the start of every day. He does a kind of negative visualization.
He tells himself that today he will encounter all kinds of difficult people.
He says, today I will do with the idle, the unthankful, the false, or the envious. He preempts the frustration. He knows it's coming.
But then he immediately follows that up with this profound realization.
He says, this person who is about to annoy me, this transgressor, is my kinsman. Not by the same blood and seed, he says, but by participation of the same reason and of the same divine particle.
That reframes the entire interaction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're not dealing with an enemy. You're dealing with a temporarily malfunctioning part of your own greater human family.
Exactly. The rational essence that governs the universe is for community. Rational creatures are made for one another. Therefore, acting for the good of society is the proper good of a rational creature. You can't actually be good for yourself unless you are also acting for the benefit of the whole.
Which translates into a primary duty to consistently perform actions that tend to the common good.
He uses the analogy of the bee. What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee. If your action doesn't serve the community in some way, it ultimately harms you too.
Okay, so that's the principle. But let's shift to the most challenging practical part. The antidote to anger, the idea of meekness. How does a Stoic actually cope with the person who intentionally or carelessly hurts them? The coworker who undermines you, the person who lies about you.
This is where the rubber meets the road. When a man trespasses against you, Marcus directs us to pause and consider one thing. What did that person supposed to be, good or evil, when they sinned?
Why does that matter?
Because that consideration reveals that the person almost certainly acted through ignorance, a profound, almost involuntary blindness about what is truly good or bad for them. They think their harmful action, the lie, the betrayal, will bring them some benefit. Status, money, satisfaction.
So they're not acting out of pure malice, but out of a deep-seated error in judgment.
That is the core Stoic assumption that acts as the antidote to anger. He quotes Plato. No soul is willingly bereft of the truth. If they knew the full damaging cost of their action to their own soul and to the community, they wouldn't do it. Their sin is based on a false premise.
And if they're acting through ignorance, then what they really deserve is pity or teaching, not our wrath.
Exactly. His prescribed solution is so simple. Forgive them, or if you can, teach them better. He says nature provided us with goodness and meekness as the antidote to the unthankful and the aggressive.
He has a powerful analogy for this that I think we should internalize.
About the fig tree.
Yeah. He says being angry with a sinner is like forbidding the fig tree to grow without its sap, or forbidding a horse to neigh.
It's their nature. Given their current state of ignorance, it's what they do. You wouldn't get angry at the tree because it needs sap to live. You would address the need. You'd water it.
So if we see a colleague who is constantly seeking praise and validation at the expense of others, instead of getting angry at their annoying behavior,
Which is the fruit.
right, we should try to diagnose their internal sap, their faulty belief that external validation is the highest good.
It makes the whole interaction less emotional and more objective. You're addressing the error, the flawed judgment, not just punishing the person for being annoying.
And this all connects back to that core idea of the inner fortress, of the self-containment of evil.
Yes. No external wickedness can truly hurt you.
This is the Stoic shield. He that sinneth, sinneth unto himself.
The person who is unjust hurts himself by making himself worse, by corrupting his own rational core. He damages his own soul, not yours.
Your neighbor's free will is indifferent to you. Marcus is certain that God would not have designed the universe so that another man's wickedness might be my evil.
Think about that. If another person's moral failing could corrupt my virtue against my will, then my happiness and peace would be completely outside my control.
Which is an unacceptable premise for a Stoic.
It's the one thing that can't be true. Therefore, the only thing that can truly harm you is your own response to their wickedness, your anger, your desire for vengeance, your own lapse in judgment.
So the rule of thumb remains. Do nothing against thy will, nor contrary to the community. Live justly, and you remain untouchable.
Untouchable by the chaos.
What an incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
An operating system from an emperor that's just as relevant today. To quickly recap the core mindset of Marcus Aurelius, it's built on this intense inward focus.
Right. Recognizing that the only thing that's truly ours is our judgment and our intention. That's control.
And it demands this profound acceptance of nature's relentless flow, seeing change, loss, even death, not as a personal disaster.
But as a necessary and impartial process for the health of the entire universe. That's acceptance.
And it's a philosophy that has to be grounded in daily practice, in the present moment, constantly simplifying your life by cutting away the unnecessary junk.
And acting with maximum intention as if every single action were your last.
The ultimate goal is just to maintain the purity of that rational core, always acting with justice and meekness toward our fellow human beings.
And remembering that we're all parts of one great interconnected city, even the broken parts.
And if you take just one encapsulating thought away from this deep dive, let it be this essential message from the emperor. Whatsoever doth happen unto thee is in very deed no such thing of itself as a misfortune, but that to bear it generously is certainly great happiness.
The event isn't the misery. Your ability to handle it with virtue is the definition of happiness. It's a total reframe.
Okay, so here's a final provocative thought for you to take away, building on these sources, something to really consider and maybe integrate into your own mindset.
Marcus suggests that we spend most of our energy, and even our prayers, completely unwisely. We're always asking for external outcomes that we just cannot control.
He makes the argument, if the gods or nature or the universe, whatever you want to call it, if they grant us liberty and power over our inner lives, our judgments, our desires, why do we use prayer and all our focus only for external things?
We pray for a raise, we pray for a relationship to work out, we pray for victory.
And the powerful example he gives in Book 9 is this: we should pray that we may not lust to lie with a woman, rather than praying that we may lie with her.
In other words, shift the entire request. Shift it from controlling the external world, getting the thing you want, to controlling your internal state, mastering the desire itself.
If we have control over that internal life, if the gods can help us with our internal reactions and desires, why don't we shift all our energy away from the outside world and focus entirely on mastering our internal reaction to it?
That is the final frontier of the Stoic mindset. Praying not for a change in your circumstances, but for the virtue and the strength to handle any circumstance. That is the ultimate control.
A profound challenge, especially for us today facing our own chaotic world. It really asks us to look at what we complain about.
And then question if we're asking for the right kind of change.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the practical wisdom of Marcus Aurelius. We hope you feel more informed, more centered, and maybe a little more ready to tackle the chaos around you with some inner calm.
And with unwavering purpose. Until the next deep dive, keep turning those obstacles into opportunities.